we're going to pivot to our rental housing bill, improving health and safety and establishing a rental registry, and our Vhip program. And so to look at the latest bill, the latest draft, which David has kindly incorporated all the comments, our work the other day, and everything to date. David Hall, I hope you're with us. The draft is up on our website. So if you want to follow along, it's on the website. And I believe it's draft. What draft is it, David? It is draft 1.1.
1.1 dated yesterday at 11:39 a.m. Does that sound right?
Yeah, except it's an odd time given our conversations. But anyway, it's that is what we have. And David, if you'd be kind enough to just walk through it a bit, just quickly, because we have walked through it before, but just to give us sort of frame it up for us as where we are at the moment.
Sure, I'll be fast. David Hall, Legislative Counsel. Would you like me to share this on the screen or just talk you through it while you look at it on your own?
I'm happy looking at it on my own, but what would other people like?
It wouldn't hurt to put it on the screen because I haven't found it yet. Tell me where I'm looking for again.
It's on today's date on the website. So if you hit Thursday, February 25th, it's there under David Hall's name. But David, why don't you share the screen and we can move through this quickly just so people have a notion of where we are and then get feedback on how we are. Because I just want to say, I think we're in pretty good shape.
Does everybody see it on their screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. I know there's a lot of people here, so I won't take a lot of time. I will give you basically just what's changed since you last saw this. I had sent around that memo that raised questions. The chair and then the group all responded, and honestly, it required very little change to the draft as you have seen it before. I did raise in 2729 this question about whether this section needed to be amended given the expanded scope of the division's authority, but as I look back at it, it occurred to me that this really specifically deals with fire and carbon monoxide safety, and that there's plenty of sections in this chapter that may relate in some cases just to fire and not necessarily to rental housing, et cetera. So the only change I've made here is just to sort of expand the title of that section to be clear that these particular provisions really just relate to fire and CO poisoning. There was a note in the questions in subsection D about what this refers to as far as the modifying phrases. I wasn't quite sure what the question is. I don't think we need to spend any time on it right now unless you want to. I think if there's still a question, I can talk to Wendy and Sarah about it offline. But again, I think this section is fine how it is, considering that later in the language, we specifically talk about rental housing and adopting rules and the authority to enforce. I think we've got it covered. So I'm going to keep moving. This is all the same. We talked about this in the committee and then in the memo and then in the responses about the concept of ADUs really being just a zoning term rather than a formalized construct in this context. I agree. I think it's a good point that it's pretty clear that if you're a single family residence used as such, you are not under the auspices of this authority. If you are a single family residence or any other structure that is rented, you come under the jurisdiction of DFS. And to the extent there are common systems, I think it just makes sense that they have the authority to inspect all of the common system. Otherwise, they would not be able to ensure fire safety, electrical safety, other issues because there are commingled systems within a single structure. So again, I don't think this requires any change given the construct here. We are good through this bit. close your eyes if this is making you feel nauseous. I just don't want to miss any highlighting, so I'm scrolling. Everybody seems to feel good about the scope of current authority and its translation over to include the what's left of the rental housing health and safety issues. I'm good with that. It sounds like the penalties in the civil section are quite rarely involved, but good to have if necessary. There's no change. Gosh, I don't think there's any more language in the DFS piece. I think the next changes really come up just in the context of the registration. And there's a few changes here. So remember that in subsection B on your screen, this is all
what page you on now?
Gosh, I've made it all the way to 15, 16.
Oh man, you are flying.
I've switched gears to the registration. We're coming up on page 16. And the proposal here, which I've incorporated, is in the duty to register. And, there's a recommendation to strike out the term long-term when we say rental housing. And that's fine. It's not necessary. Rental housing that is subject to non-VSA chapter 137, that captures it. That's every landlord-tenant arrangement, except for the list of exceptions that are present in that chapter, which are not under that law. Things like staying in a hospital or at a boarding church-related program on a temporary basis, or emergency assistance. Those are things that are not subject to our landlord-tenant law. Everything else would be subject to chapter 137. So the belts and suspenders here in A2 and down in subdivision B as well is to make sure that however an owner of rental property finds their way into the system, they are required to provide those data points that I was just pausing on above in subsection B. So whether you're, when you come into the department, you have to give this information, or if you are subject to the jurisdiction of a local, municipal, whatever kind of non-state rental housing health and safety program, if you're governed under those regimes, and we want to make sure in line 18 here that they are requiring you to provide that same information and that they can provide it to the state. And that way, however, rental property is being regulated, whether it's exclusively at the state level or there's also a municipal counterpart, that same set of data will be provided by the landlord to the program. So we have all of the information about the different kinds of rental housing.
May I ask a question at this point about that section?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
This is on the issue of privacy. Presumably, this information is now all a public record. Do you want your phone number available to robocallers? Do you want your email address available to mass mailers, which it will be if this is all publicly available?
It's a good question. I believe much of it is already, as we've discussed, already publicly available. And I would turn to Wendy and Sarah to.
The phone number and email are not publicly available, are they?
Well, our emails are all publicly available, but you're right. Phone numbers are in the phone book, and some of them now that we have cell phones.
Anymore.
I use the phone book. Thanks. Some of us use the phone book. So I guess I'd turn to Sarah and Wendy for an answer on that.
I need to confirm what is available through the primary source of the data will be from the tax department landlord certificate. I will try to call that up in a minute and go back to it. I know that in Burlington, that information is public because they have their own municipal program. I can't speak to the other communities. We can try to find that out. Wendy may know. I know that on the lead registry, we already have a lead registry. That is all available as well. So those are the initial sources, but if you want to keep going, I'll
Right, but
confirm what is on the tax department landlord certificate that is already currently available publicly.
and that is publicly available?
Yeah, I'm trying to, I want to confirm
Okay.
what is public and what is not. I think that, and it's a nuance, but we should, and I don't know how to put it in legislation. It is really important that we get that information, whether that needs to be public, I guess is a conversation that we could have, because a huge point of the registry is to be able to contact the owners. And I would say in particular, the email and mailing address, less so probably the phone number, because the value of the list is to be able to tell you you're eligible for rental rehab, you're eligible for back rent. This is a new law that, you know, on a code. I mean, so we're presuming in this day and age that the primary method of communication will be email. And in my opinion, email, because you can effectively make them up as you go, it is not a privacy issue, because you can have an email specifically for your property, as an example.
And if I may jump in, this is Sean Gilpin from the
Sure.
Department of Housing and Community Development. We do actually currently have a registry for mobile home park owners that does collect this information, but it is not made public. So we hold it at DHCD so that we can contact park owners, but are not obligated to make it public. So I think that is certainly an open question and an option.
Thanks. I think it's a good question that we need to, fully resolve. So thank you, Randy, for tagging it. David, let's keep going, because that's I think a big conversation and well tagged. David?
Yep. I'm just seeing what comes next. It's the same principle in on page 17, just making sure that when they go through those local programs, they get that data. No change to the DPS positions, the DHCD positions. There's a small change here on 602A. This is duties of the local health officers. This language is new. Rather than continue with a long later section that has to do with inspections and such, this is a more economical way of saying that if it is just the health officer who does an inspection, then they need to issue an inspection report that is subject to the same process and requirements as for DFS above. I want to flag B just to the group to let you know that I had originally, this was all struck out. And, after I read it through a number of times, it occurred to me that maybe this should not be removed. And that's because public health hazard and public health risk are defined terms that far transcend, just rental housing. And, it specifically references here public water systems, food or lodging establishments, and then they're supposed to contact environmental health. So that's a separate authority and duty of local health officials that I don't see why this bill should be revoking that. It relates to another matter. So I think we should just leave that as it is. By contrast, 603 was added just a few years ago. It is specific to rental housing inspections. And as I just said, the part that we've added up above in subdivision 5 is correlates to this. It is, again, the duty that a local health official, when conducting an inspection, issue a report in the same manner, subject to the same requirements as we're adding to DFS. So I think the transition language looks okay to everybody. Again, in a nutshell, this just says that things are going to keep working. There's concurrent authority until DPS adopt rules to become the primary and state authority entity here in rental housing space. And it gives DFS the authority to just adopt in whole cloth, without going through rulemaking, the existing health code that is already on the books. So for landlords of the world, this would not change anything for you. You would still be subject to the same laws and the same code and the same enforcement and all that. It's sort of a back end transition over time of power and authority. If public safety does want to change the substance of the health code as it currently stands, they do have to go through rulemaking. So they don't just start changing things without a public notice and participation in a hearing and all that, as provided in our Administrative Procedures Act. But again, if they just want to adopt in whole cloth the current code as it currently stands, they can do that, and that triggers the full transition. That's it for the rental housing health and safety inspection and all that jazz. The next piece is the Vhip proposal that is in this amendment, which is new to.
Sorry, and then sorry, David, but just the appropriations are.
Those are later in the bill.
They're late. They're a little later. Okay, great. So we go straight to Vhip.
Yeah. So this includes a purpose section here in 8, and then the program itself in 9. It is largely what you are familiar with. I mean, at this point, you've seen the Vhip proposal a number of times. There was a program that was comparable using CARES Act funding. There are some nuances here, and I'll just quickly touch on those. I mean, again, this applies to eligible properties that aren't code compliant or are vacant, but it also has a freestanding third category for accessory dwelling. So that sort of expands the universe a little bit as far as what would be eligible. And then as far as administration, still goes through partner organizations. That's the same. For program requirements, I think a big change here from what you've seen in the past is that this funding could take the form of either a grant or a forgivable loan. And there are different requirements for those. The maximum amount of the state investment would be $30,000 per unit. There is a landlord matching requirement for funds or in-kind services of 20% or more of the value of grant or loan. It has to include a weatherization component, has to comply with the building and health codes, has to apply to successors and interests for a period of time.
Sorry, David, there's like this drumming sound and it's really distracting for me. I'm not sure if other people are hearing that. It's like it's like a low drumming on the table. Okay.
I'm not hearing it.
Okay.
Is anybody else hearing it?
I'm not.
I think it's how David moves the text forward, up.
Oh.
Is it the clicking of my computer? Is it that sound?
Yes.
It's my cursor button.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
I kept thinking someone was like giving you a drum roll every time you were going to a new section.
Wait for it. Brrr.
Sorry. Okay.
I'm not sure what I can do about that. I can try to use my arrow key and see if that's less noisy.
That's a little less noisy. Thanks, David.
Yeah, I figure I've hit that left mouse button about 1 billion times now in the past year, maybe more. Let's see.
You were on 5 just to come down. You were on line 10, I think, sort of roughly.
I am really sorry, Senator. It's
program requirements.
So there are separate programs. I've broken this out into separate subsections for grants versus forgivable loans because there's different sort of ground rules. So for a grant, it's a 5-year period, right, that these requirements apply. And, the landlord goes through the nonprofit housing partner, and there's sort of a priority for the lease. The standard is that they have to make the lease unit available to a household that is exiting homelessness. And if they can't find a household exiting homelessness, they go back to the department or the housing organization essentially and make that case and have to get approval for someone else. And that has to be a household with an income equal to or less than 80% of area median, or if they're unavailable, another household. They have to require housing vouchers that are available. If there's no subsidy, then the total cost of the rent can't exceed fair market rent. There's a sort of this concept of this process of a grant could become a forgivable loan if they want to sort of switch over into that program. The forgivable loan is a 10-year period. It's not 5, it's 10. It isn't necessarily required to be targeted to a family exiting homelessness. But there is the cap, on the rent to equal the fair market rent. And then that's forgivable over 10 years of participation. So there's a lot of detail there, but big picture, the way it works, $30,000, got to have a match, got to meet code, could be in the form of a grant over 5 years or a forgivable loan over 10 years. And there are restrictions on, the households to whom you can rent the property.
David, line 17 on this page, should it read for each year in which the landlord participates? The word year is not.
Which page are you on? Are you on page 27?
I'm on page 27.
Yeah.
Yes.
Line 17.
Yep. Good catch. Yep. For each
For
year.
each,
in
yeah,
which
each
the
year.
landlord participates. All right. So that's the Vhip piece. And then we have the appropriations. These are not changed. I don't know if you had a specific question on them or.
I think we should just remind ourselves what the appropriations are that we're going to, that are included in the bill.
Sure.
So
there's $200,000 to DHCD one-time startup funds to help create the registry and the positions in section 5, $200,000 from the general fund to fire safety, one-time startup funding for the 5 positions at DFS. Under C here, the amounts collected from registration fees. From those amounts, finance and management would allocate $200,000 to DHCD to create the registry and $345,691 to fire safety for the positions. Right now, I don't have an amount for Vhip. I'm not sure what your pleasure is on funding and whether it even goes in this bill or it goes somewhere else.
May I ask you a question, David, before you go? You're ahead of me a bit here.
Sure. Yep.
I'm reading slowly and I'm still back on how this gets paid for by the tenant over time. And you mentioned that the landlord will accept vouchers that are available to pay for all or a portion. And if no voucher is available, the cost just won't exceed the applicable fair market value. The question is, for a person who is exiting homelessness, generally there's obviously a financial component. They may not be necessarily making even 80% of the average wage, and are dependent upon vouchers in order to pay for the housing. Now, if the housing for one reason or another is not available, what options does the landlord have if it can't find a tenant who can pay the rent and who doesn't have vouchers? Must the landlord leave it vacant?
I think there's that process that's specified under the grants, and it, as best I understand it, it basically says you have to give first priority to exiting homelessness if
Yes.
they're available. If they're not, then the landlord goes back to the department or the housing organization. They have to make this determination that a household exiting homeless is not available. And so then the next priority goes to a household at or less than 80% of
Right.
AMI. And then if they're not available, another household with approval of the department. Whether or not that's how the department wants this to work, I defer to them. But from the language that I received and the way that I tried to think this through in my mind and spit it out into a bill, this is where we are.
Right.
The order of operations.
Well, it's just something to add to the department.
Yeah, and Randy, we're about to hear from Sean. So
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, David. Okay.
That's it, except for the effective dates. And I don't know that we need to dwell on those. I mean, I had raised the issue of whether we could just try to streamline this, given the transition provision, all the different language about authority could take effect on passage. Anything that involves money is probably best at July the 1st. And then I guess the big one is, when do you want to require registration? And that's, I think, pretty consistently been January 1st of next year. And that's what it is now.
Right. That's good to get that discussion going. I mean, to just make that decision. That's one of our decision points. Thank you, Michael.
Senator Clarkson, has it always been the case over the last year and this year that the registry was going to be maintained by VHCB? Did I get that wrong?
No, it's DHCD.
Oh,
DH,
okay.
Department of
Housing and Community
That's
Development.
what I
Josh.
That's what I thought, and I heard VHCB,
Yeah.
so thank you.
Anybody have a question before? I think maybe the natural transition, as it were, is to maybe to Josh. I mean, not to Josh, to Sean. I'm looking at Sean and saying Josh. And they're next to each other on my screen. Which one of you would like to go first? Because we have you both.
Either way, I mean, I can talk real big picture and then Sean can get into the details.
Great, because we sadly only have a few more minutes for today, and then we will continue this tomorrow.
Sure. Just to answer Senator Brock's question real quick, the intent is never to make someone rent to someone that doesn't have income. So the idea of someone exiting homelessness would be they would have a housing voucher, a rental voucher. And if someone wasn't available with a rental voucher, they then can move to someone that's 80% or below. That's what the HUD fair market rents are pegged at for households that are at 80% AMI or below. That's what they can afford. Maybe there's some clarity needed there, but there, except during COVID times right now, no one is forced to house someone without any income to pay rent. So that wasn't the intent at all. So I don't know.
You have a voucher at move-in. What happens because there are reasons under which you can lose that voucher or the eligibility for it. What happens 7 months or a year down the road if the individual no longer has that voucher?
Sure. Yeah. Tenancies don't always work out. If someone loses their voucher, loses their income, stops paying rent, the landlord's able to go through the normal eviction process for lack of payment.
And that works very well according to what landlords are telling us.
Not right now, for certain.
Now is an extraordinary moment, sadly, which has extended itself for landlords, which is, as we know, a challenge for some.
Sean, do you want to add to that?
Yeah.
I was just going to say the intention was for the grant funding with the 5-year that in a situation where a tenancy wasn't working out or a voucher was lost or what have you, that the property owner would then go back to the continuum of care organization to find another tenant that would fit. And we left in the option of them moving from the 5-year requirements with the grant funds to the 10-year requirement of affordability that has less restrictions. So you can, a property owner would be able to move sort of from one tier to the other if for whatever reason there was ongoing issues with housing somebody who was brought in by the actually it's the Coordinated Entry Lead Organization is the mouthful that describes the groups that would actually be bringing people forward out of homelessness. So at the very least we get an affordable unit brought online, and at the very best we get a unit brought online that's housing somebody who is exiting homelessness.
Great, thanks. Do you two want to speak at all to the to how Vhip is set up here and what else is needed? Or
yeah, that would be great if I could, Senator Clarkson. Just I wanted to mention and advocate for the eventual inclusion of the homeownership piece, which is in the House bill. Vhip has this rental rehab component, and it has a homeownership purchase and rehab component. In H256. The homeownership component, I think we shared with you right in the beginning of the session with our sort of policy papers and the goals there, really hitting at the need that in many communities we've heard from, be it Barry or St. Johnsbury or Rutland, Springfield, that they feel they have a lot of rental units, and what they really need in these neighborhoods is more homeowners. And that these are where affordable homes are. But these homes are in need of rehab and repair. You can look at real estate listings and papers, and you can still see homes in these communities. And these communities often fall with the opportunity zone designations. You could still find a home for $80,000 or $90,000, but they need $50,000 of rehab work. And this is an opportunity for folks to become first-time homeowners, get a grant to make those needed repairs so they can purchase that home. And it also has a set aside or a target of 25% of the funds for BIPOC community members. And it's really an attempt to sort of, let people become homeowners in these communities and really revitalize the neighborhood. The fact is, you're not finding community banks anymore that will do a mortgage and construction loan at the same time purchase option. They don't exist. And so alternative here is these homes are being bought up by outside investors and being turned into, other uses. And these really are our last affordable homes in Vermont to let people move from rental to home ownership and actually have a mortgage that's lower than what their rent would be. So that's in the other bill, and I know it isn't in here now, but I would just encourage you folks to look at that and consider it. And the last piece, I know it's not.
Josh, would you get me the number of the bill? Well, I can work with David. It's H
256.
256. That's right. Yeah. Thanks.
And we worked with the Rental Housing Advisory Board and the collective group, and first this wasn't directly related, but I think everyone saw the value here of having a complete package for both renters and a smaller amount for this homeowner purchase rehab, which is in the governor's base budget at $1 million. And that this would recycle. It works much the same way that the manufactured housing tax credit works, where this would be a 0% deferred until sale or transfer loan. And so that money would recycle and go back to the same homeownership organizations, housing nonprofits that we will partner with, and they'll be able to recycle those dollars and help another homeowner down the line. So, happy to talk more about that, but just didn't want to miss this opportunity to ask for you to consider including it in your bill. And we can share the brief policy paper on it with you again, if that's helpful.
And that's the revolving loan fund that you've talked about?
Yeah, it's part of VHIP, but it's for the homeowner rehab and purchase,
Right.
and it's a revolving fund.
Allison Michael has a question.
Yeah, sorry, Michael.
Josh, can you just, what activity, if any, is going on in the House in response to all of this stuff?
They received a walkthrough, an introduction of the bill yesterday, right, Sean? But my understanding is that they are essentially going to wait for this bill to come over to them before they take any more action.
Are they doing anything on VHIP or this revolving loan fund, or are you guys doing anything with the budget on that, or is everything on the shoulders of this committee?
VHIP, both the homeownership piece and the rental piece are in a 256, combined with the rental registry, and everything that you have here is there with the addition of the homeownership piece.
But they've only just started it.
Right.
I mean, they haven't started really working on it. They just walked through it. So, I mean, they're not in it. Right. That's why they're waiting for this bill to do further work on all these things.
It's my understanding, and I sat in, I mean, that the House committee is anxiously waiting for this version, which would include VHIP. So VHIP is not going through separately, even though I believe there is a set aside in the governor's budget for it, but it's not going through as a separate bill. From my point of view and Rehab's point of view, we very much see this as a package. It's always been presented that way. We presented it that way last year and the year before. It's actually in much better shape because we were able to have the pilot program, and DHCD has really worked out all the details of it. The only new piece is actually this homeownership piece, which we didn't have in our original recommendations, but we fully support, and again, see it as part of the package. It's the carrot part of the bill. So like I said, it's not going through separately. It's really part of this package. And the 256 effectively is almost identical. David can pipe in, but they're pretty much the same.
Right. And the VHIP piece, I mean, we've discussed it at great length, and we had the pilot. I think we're comfortable with that. The addition of the homeownership piece and the revolving loan fund, which is that what we're calling it? The revolving.
Well, in the bill, it's described as homeowner revolving fund, but it's Vermont Housing Investment for first time homeowner purchase and rehab, first time Vermont homeowner purchase and rehab.
Right, and so this is interesting because of course we have the VHFA program, and I am working on a bill for an enhanced down payment, first time homeowners and down payment assistance program. So those two programs, I mean, that exists also. And,
and they work, it's designed to work together because the down payment assistance from VHFA is small. It's only $5,000 or $6,000. And this program is mainly for the rehab. We've capped the down payment assistance at only 25% of the maximum $50,000 grant because there are more sources to get down payment assistance help, but there are no sources to buy a home that's a fixer-upper if you're low income. If you're wealthy, you can go and borrow all you want to fix it up. And that's what's happening to our low income homeownership stock for first-time Vermonters is they're being bought by investors and that's our last affordable housing stock to move people into homeownership. And with our really low rates for people of color owning homes, this is one of our last chances to help people move into homeownership because it's over $300,000 to build new if you can even hit that price point.
I'm clear on that. One thing that and that's something to think about because I know we're at time, and I think that if we'll take a look at that. But one thing that we do need for this bill, if we're going to include VHIP, just even the initial piece of VHIP, the House could always add the home ownership piece and take more time with testimony and on the revolving fund and stuff. The one thing we do need in here is a budget for VHIP, which we would need to include. So Sean, if you'd be kind enough to send that to Dave, to us, that would be great. Oh, Michael.
Well, let me wind up here. Because we have the assembled folks here, our agenda is packed.
Yeah.
And we only have one more week to work on this. And
Right.
this bill has to go to appropriations and to finance. It has a lot of moving parts. We'll do our best, but don't be surprised if you see pieces jettisoned in order to get this through, so then the House can do their work on it. We were expecting the House to do more than just a walkthrough at this point. So,
right. And to the chair's point, we have had a lot of testimony on the bill as it is at the moment. And it may well work that we leave the additional piece to the House to take time with. So, but we do need the Vhip budget for the Vhip proposal as it is now. We don't have that yet in the bill.
I believe it's in the House bill, Sean, right? Our budget,
yeah,
as requested by the governor. Yeah, okay.
Right, and so David and I can we can put that in.
Senator,
right. Yeah,
may I just say just that this bill, as you're looking at it, as David has presented it, it's really not much different at all than the last two you looked at and the one you passed. It's actually a better bill because we've been tweaking it a little bit, but this is just not new. And it's a good bill. It's been well vetted. You've passed it once before. And I just so strongly encourage you. I mean, we can spend weeks reviewing it. Senator Rahm's the only one who hasn't seen it in the past, and she and I have had lots of discussions on it. So I think she's way up to speed on it. It isn't new, and it's not. It's better than what you got last year and the year before, and I think it's just well vetted. And so I just strongly encourage you.
Thanks. We need to end, but while we have Wendy, we'll have both of you again tomorrow, which I appreciate. Wendy, any comment before we wind up? Or Mike?
Just go for it, please.
Mike, any last thought?
We lost him, but
there you go. You're unmuted.
Oh, Mike, I didn't know which Mike you were talking about.
Sorry. Oh, Michael, I refer to my revered chair as Michael. I got to know as Mike.
I'm all set.
Great. Terrific. Then we will take this up again tomorrow morning. And Mr. Chair, you and I have a hot date with Nathan.
Can I just ask one?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't see your hand.
No, I didn't put it up yet. But I was just, what I'm confused about is if we're trying to put some of the Vhip and BIPOC homeownership pieces into this bill before we pass it or not. And maybe that's what we're deciding tomorrow. But if we were deciding to put that in, I would really, Sean gave me a great preview of what they're thinking there, but I would really need to see more about the percentage increase we're trying to gain in BIPOC homeownership, the personnel time that would be, put towards that. So I don't know if I'd be ready to support that proposal in this bill if we want to move this bill tomorrow. I have lots of questions.
Just as much as I love the homeownership edition, I think we have to leave that probably for the House. That's
fine. I would agree. Let's move this so we don't get stuck. And
I need a vehicle. We need a vehicle to the House, and the House can really then dig in on the homeownership and the BIPOC piece. We will also have the enhanced down payment assistance program to look at after crossover, which we will be able to look at fully, and maybe we can marry them. But I think that, quite honestly, my gut feeling right now is that we deal with the bill that we are looking at today, and that we let the House add the ownership piece and the revolving loan fund. We don't have time to look at that now, given the time constraints we have. Is that fair, Mr. Chair?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. We need to
move on, and
we're not going to be moving this bill in any way tomorrow. This one's definitely going to be held over to the week we get back from vacation. We have several other bills that are ahead of this one. Okay,